want to say welcome to all of you here, and a special welcome. I know we've got some guests from other parishes, great leaders. There's a priest even from Southern Ontario and others from Indiana and probably other places too. And so welcome to all of you. I know you've been journeying and inspired by what's going on here at the parish, and I hope this visit blesses you. A few weeks ago, Father Dan and I were out to see a movie. And it happened to be the same Friday night of the torrential downpours, the record-breaking storm, and it was quite an adventure getting home. Debris on the streets, roads closed, cars abandoned everywhere. We had to wade through knee-deep water to get home. And in some ways, it felt like we were in the middle of a zombie apocalypse film, right? But that's a story for another time. I do want to tell you about the movie that we went to see that night. It's called The Sound of Freedom. And in many ways, it is more powerful and more disturbing than a zombie movie or even than the flooding we experienced. It's based on a true story of a special agent in the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. His name is Tim Ballard, who worked especially in the Division of Human Trafficking. And so it's a very heavy movie. The main actor, played by Jim Caviezel, who also portrayed Jesus in The Passion of the Christ. And it's this, as the story begins, early on, these two agents, they arrest a man who is sharing inappropriate images of children. And after their shift, his partner says to him, yeah, we did this, but have you ever rescued any children? And he's like, well, that's not the job. That's not what we do. But it led to deeper reflection, and he eventually took this giant, courageous step to begin this work of starting to rescue children from human trafficking. And my understanding is this organization he started to date has saved over 4,000 children who are caught in human trafficking. And I remember, anyways, I don't want to give too much away. Go see the movie. Go see the movie. Obviously, viewer discretion is advised. But I remember at the end of the movie feeling two things simultaneously. I felt incredibly inspired by this real-life hero, and I felt incredibly intimidated by this huge problem of human trafficking. And I wonder if we've had that experience before where you've felt this double reaction at the same time. Have you ever felt both inspired and intimidated? Maybe a movie like this, based on true events, or a book you've read, or listening to the news, some of the heroic events, and you just feel this gap between the heroes and us. I know on our minds and hearts, all of these wildfires going on across our country, now in Hawaii. And I think of some of those firefighters who have chosen this dangerous role to go in and fight the fires so that they can rescue and help other people in danger. And some of them who have paid the ultimate cost with their lives. And I think, I'm so inspired by that, and I also feel like I could never do that myself. And maybe even spiritually, when we look at the lives of the saints, we feel that double response also. Recently, I've been binging a podcast. It's called Heroes of the Faith, and it happens to be done by our very own Father Isaac Longworth. There's a free plug for you, brother. But it's just pretty impressive, these stories of lives of the saints. Just this past week, we had two martyrs. Saint Lawrence, who was a martyr, he died in one of the early church persecutions, and Saint Edith Stein, this brilliant Jewish philosopher who became a Catholic and a nun, but eventually died in the Nazi gas chambers. And I look at these lives of the saints, and again, I feel so inspired by them and so intimidated, like I could never be like them. And besides, wouldn't it be just easier to stay in the comfort zone where it's familiar, where it's easy? And I am reminded of that great quote by Pope Benedict XVI. The world offers you comfort, but you were not made for comfort. You were made for greatness. And today in our gospel, we hear all about this story of getting out of the comfort zone, doing what is seemingly impossible by human standards. It happens to take place in the midst of a record-breaking storm. Jesus had sent the crowds away. He sent the disciples off in the boat. He went to pray. And the disciples, you can just picture them battling this huge storm, 20-foot waves on the Sea of Galilee. And all night long, it's somewhere between 3 and 6 o'clock in the morning, they see what appears to be a ghost walking across. Are they hallucinating? They haven't slept. And they realize it's actually Jesus. Now, I just want to pause. This is in Matthew 14. But if you go back to Matthew chapter 8, something very similar happens. They're in the boat. They're crossing the sea. There's this record-breaking storm. And Jesus, this time, he's fast asleep in the boat. They think they're going to die. They wake him up. And Jesus, he arises. He takes authority and calms the storm. Now, fast forward to Matthew 14. So today, if I was in the boat with these disciples and we're in this storm, this is what I would have done. If I saw Jesus, I would have been like, hey, Jesus, come here. We need your help. Come, hop into the boat. Do what you did last time. Calm the storm. Save us. Now, Peter is not me. He's spontaneous, impetuous. And for whatever reason, he says, hey, Jesus, there's this insane storm. We're exhausted. We don't even know if we're going to make it. And so, Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water. Have you ever thought how ridiculous this is? What did he think he was going to do? Even if you managed to get to Jesus, what are they going to do out there? Hang out? Smoke a cigar? Walk it into shore and leave the other guys in the middle of this? What is he going to do? And yet, he does it. He makes a part where he starts to sing, Jesus saves him, says, you of little faith. And I do think, here's Peter with his little faith, which was actually a lot more faith than the other yahoos still in the boat, right? And it reminds me that that's all Jesus needs is a little bit of faith. But I love the instinct of Peter. Right? In the middle of a storm, what does he do? He sees Jesus doing something incredible, and he says, I want to go out. I want to be part of that. Jesus, call me to you. I want to do what humanly speaking feels impossible. Call me out of my comfort zone to go to you. And I think it's a great image for us today. Now, you might be wondering, I thought this preaching series was about the Mass. Breaking bread together. What the heck does any of this have to do with the Mass? Good question. I think in these first 3 weeks, it's almost been like a before, during, and after that we've been looking at. In the first week that we began, we had Father Dan who preached about the liturgy of the Word and how before Mass we can read the Sunday readings to prime the pump, to prepare ourselves for Mass, to receive the most we possibly can. Last week, Father Isaac, he was preaching, and he talked about the spiritual power of the imagination, how we can use our imaginations to actually see what is really happening here during Mass. And today, I want to talk about after, that what we've received in the Mass through the Word, through the Eucharist, through the music, through the prayer, that after Mass, we're meant to go with that out into the world. It's not meant to stay here in these four walls. Now, you might not realize this, but the very word Mass, it comes from the Latin word missa, which means sent. And in the Latin, the final dismissal was ite missa est, which literally, go, she has been sent. Meaning she, meaning the church, all of you, all of us together, have been sent on mission. And in English, translated, there's actually 4 different options that the priest can say, or the deacon. Go forth, the Mass is ended, go and announce the gospel of the Lord, go in peace, glorifying the Lord by your life, or just simply go in peace. You notice anything in common to all of these? Go. The word go. Yes, go. And it's not like, hey, get lost. Get out of here. We got to close up shop. Or, hey, let's keep it moving, people. We got to clear the parking lot for the next one here. No, go is a commissioning. You are being sent out into the world to transform it. And our response to that is, thanks be to God. Which, again, it's not like, thanks be to God, this thing is finally finished. No, thank you, God, for entrusting me with this mission to go out. And I know of churches where right at the exit, they put up this sign, you are now entering the mission field. And it's just such a powerful image. It's like Peter in the gospel today. He got out of the boat. He got out of the comfort zone to do something incredible. At the end of Mass, we are called to go out of our comfort zones, to take what we've received, to talk to people, to share, to be a witness. And I think if you're anything like me, you might feel both inspired by that high calling that we each have and a little bit intimidated as well. Now, here's the key. I want you to pay attention to this. In the Mass, Jesus gives us access to power that we didn't have before. So if you came in here today and you're like, I couldn't possibly go make a difference, that's way too big for me. Well, in the Mass, Jesus gives us access to an ability to go forth on mission with courage that we didn't have in what we receive in coming together, in worshiping, in the Word, in the Eucharist, and all of it is meant to help us go. I would summarize it this way. I'd say the Mass empowers us to go out. The Mass empowers us to go out. And I was thinking of an analogy about this, and again, all analogies fall short, but I was thinking about a football game. Right? So some people, they go to Mass kind of like the way spectators go to a football game. Right? They go, they watch, they enjoy the game, and at the end of the game, they go home. Right? Well, I wonder if we're called not just to be spectators, but to be players on the field. And the Mass is kind of like halftime in the locker room. Now, bear with me again. I mean no disrespect whatsoever of the Mass. It's so sacred, but there's an analogy I want to draw here. So these players, they've been fighting on the field inch by inch, yard by yard, and the ref calls halftime, and there's this moment where the whole team comes together, has a break from all that fighting out there. There's a chance of fellowship, maybe a rousing speech from the head coach. There's a nourishment for some of them to get recharged, and some of their injuries are attended to. And then at the end of halftime, the team is sent. Misa. They are sent out back onto the field because there's a lot more football left to play. And that's, I think, a great image for us. And again, the Mass, I mean no disrespect, it's the highest form of prayer. It's the source and summit. It is literally where heaven touches earth. But as long as we're on this side of heaven, the Mass isn't the end. The Mass is a place where we come together for a pause, a sacred pause, as we've been probably fighting out there all week long with all of the different stresses of life. It's a break to come, hopefully to receive words of encouragement, to be spiritually nourished, and from here, a place to be sent out. Because there's a lot more football left to play. There's a lot more life left to live and to take what we've received and to go out on mission. And so, if I could give you one thing to do, to apply today, it would be this. During the Mass, maybe after you've received communion, as a time for prayer, you might say something like this to Jesus. Jesus, what's the one thing you want me to take from Mass today as I go out on mission? What's the one thing that I'm supposed to take with me? You know, here at St. Benedict's, we want to come together and have this Mass, this sacred halftime moment together as a community. And we think it's so important. I mean, I love the Mass. I love it when we get to come together and worship God like this. And I love how it's meant to empower us to go out on mission. We see this mission as so essential. We put it right on our game plan, right? That go out to love, to share, to invite. And I just want to give a few examples concretely of what this looks like, because I see parishioners already going out on mission in so many different ways, where what they receive on Sunday is carried forth into Monday and Tuesday and Friday, that empowers their mission. So, for example, we have these shelters outside where we've got currently 2 guests, Dave and Kelly, and for over a year now, parishioners, they go out, meaning they go home to their kitchens, and they prepare a meal to bring back to feed our guests in these shelters. And since October, 5 days a week, Monday to Friday, our guests are given hot meals. That's part of the. I know parishioners who go out to serve in other local soup kitchens. I know parishioners who go out after Mass with Holy Communion to visit the sick, or they spend time with those in nursing homes. I know parishioners who go out online. They share, some of you share the link to the YouTube, the Mass, the homily with your friends, with your family members, somebody who shared it with his neighborhood Facebook group, just wanting it to go out. I know people who their go out is to write a reflection, kind of like a blog on LinkedIn. And they share that in such a way, often it's informed by the homily on Sunday. Just this little way of infusing Jesus ever so gently into the secular professional environment. I know people who go out from our church, they go out to work, and they're attentive to their coworkers. And I think of one lady who noticed another person who was really struggling, came alongside her, befriended her, and eventually invited her to our parish. People who invite others to Alpha. And maybe you're here today because somebody invited you. I know parishioners who go out, they go out for walks, and they bump into people, and they bump into the same people over and over again. They start talking to them, they share life, they share struggles, and in time they share about the difference that Jesus has made in their lives. This kind of go out that we're called to, every single one of us, we're called to go out of the walls of this church to share. And maybe you feel inspired by this call, and maybe you feel a little intimidated like me. Well, Jesus says, do not be afraid. And at the end of Mass today, when Father Isaac gives us that final dismissal, when you hear the words, go, let it be our marching orders to be a parish that goes out to transform the world.